What if I told you some of the biggest scams in the world are not happening on your phone, not through messages, but inside systems you trust the most? Hospitals, healthcare, places meant to save lives. My name is Edward. I am a cybersecurity specialist, and today I'm going to show you a real case that will completely change how you understand scams. This is not a small fraud. This is not a simple trick. This is a multi-million-dollar scam, and real people have been arrested. Now listen carefully, because this is where it becomes shocking. These people were running hospice centers, places meant for patients who are near the end of life, people who need care, support, respect. But instead of helping, they used the system to make money. They enrolled people who were not even sick. Yes, healthy people. And they billed the government as if these patients were dying. Millions of dollars were claimed. Millions were paid. In one case alone, over $9 million in false claims were submitted, and more than $8 million was actually paid. Now pause for a moment and think about this. This money was not coming from a company. It was coming from taxpayers, from people like you. Now here comes the most disturbing part. Some of these scammers were paying people to pretend to be patients. They were giving money just to sign documents. They were sending unnecessary items, wheelchairs, supplements, equipment, not for care, but to make the fraud look real. Now ask yourself, would you ever expect something like this from a healthcare system? That is why this scam worked, because it was built on trust. And this is the biggest lesson. The most dangerous scams hide inside trusted systems. Now let me break this down so you understand how these scams work. First step, trust. They use something you already believe in: hospitals, government, healthcare. Second step, manipulation. They create fake records, fake claims, fake situations. Third step, money flow. They collect payments repeatedly, silently, and before anyone realizes, millions are gone. Now let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever trusted something just because it looked official? If yes, write in the comments, "I will verify, not assume." Because assumption is where scams begin. Now here comes something even more shocking. Some of these people were not new to fraud. They had done it before, and still, they continued. Because the system was slow to catch them. And that is exactly how large scams survive. They don't happen in one day, they grow slowly. Now listen carefully, because this part is very important. You might be thinking, this is big level fraud, it doesn't affect me. But that is not true, because every scam, big or small, follows the same pattern: trust, manipulation, payment. The only difference is the scale. Now imagine this. A scammer sends you a message, pretends to be from a trusted source, creates urgency, asks for payment. It is the same structure, just a smaller version. Now, here comes the most powerful realization. If you understand big scams, you can avoid small ones, because the thinking is the same. Now, let me tell you something from my experience. People don't lose money because they are unaware. They lose money because they trust too quickly. They don't question, they don't verify. And that one moment changes everything. Now imagine two people, both see something official. One trusts immediately. The other pauses, checks, verifies. One becomes a victim. The other stays safe. The difference is not intelligence, and the difference is awareness. Because that one habit can protect you everywhere. Now remember this final message. Scams are not always loud. They are not always obvious. Sometimes they wear a uniform, they carry a title, they operate inside systems, and that is what makes them dangerous. But once you understand this, you see things differently. You stop trusting blindly, you start thinking clearly, and that is where your protection begins. Because from that moment, you are no longer an easy target. You begin to notice things that others ignore, a message that feels too urgent, a call that sounds too perfect, an offer that seems too good, and instead of reacting, you question. Instead of rushing, you pause. Instead of trusting instantly, you verify. That one shift changes everything. Now let me tell you something very important. Scammers don't want smart people. They want fast decisions. They don't want you to think, they want you to react. So the moment you slow down, you take control away from them. Now imagine this. You receive a message. It looks official. It sounds serious. But instead of believing it immediately, you do something different. You check the source. You search the name. You confirm the details. And suddenly, what looked real becomes false. That is the power of thinking clearly. Now let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever trusted something and later realized it was wrong? Now think about your life, your hard work, your savings, your peace, all of it can be protected by one simple rule. Don't trust quickly. Think first, because in today's world, information is everywhere, but truth requires effort. And the people who stay safe are the ones who make that effort. Now, remember this always. You don't need to fear scams. You just need to understand them, because once you understand something, you cannot be easily fooled by it. So, from today, make a decision not to react quickly, but to think clearly, not to trust blindly, but to verify wisely. Because your protection is not in avoiding everything. It is in understanding everything. And when you understand something, you stop feeling afraid of it. You stop reacting blindly. You stop getting confused. You stop making rushed decisions. Instead, you start seeing patterns. You notice how scams begin, how they build trust, how they create pressure, how they ask for action. And once you see that pattern, you can recognize it anywhere. In a message, in a phone call, in a website, even in real-life situations. You are looking at it from outside. That distance creates clarity, and clarity creates control. Now let me tell you something very important. Scammers don't want you to understand, because the moment you understand, their system stops working. Their words lose power. Their urgency loses effect. Their tricks become obvious. So what do? They rush you, they pressure you, they confuse you, because confusion blocks understanding. But when you slow down, you remove that confusion. Now let me ask you something honestly. Have you ever looked back at a situation and thought, how did I not see this earlier? Now think about this deeply. You don't need to avoid technology. You don't need to stop using services. You don't need to disconnect from the world. You just need to understand how things work. Because once you understand, you become independent. You don't rely on others to tell you what is right. You don't get influenced easily. You don't fall into pressure. You become aware. And awareness is the strongest protection in today's world. Now remember this always. The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to be aware. You may still receive scam calls. You may still see fake messages. You may still encounter fraud attempts. But now you will see them differently. Not as threats, but as patterns you understand. And that understanding keeps you safe. This is Edward, cybersecurity specialist, and I want you to move forward with awareness, with clarity, and with confidence. Stay alert, stay calm, and always choose understanding over reaction.